The cargo bay of the human freighter Meridian Dawn erupted in flames without warning. Oscar Chen, the ship's maintenance engineer, had been running a routine diagnostic when the fuel line ruptured, spraying combustible liquid across the storage containers. Within seconds, the fire bloomed into an inferno, its orange tongues licking hungrily at the metal walls. Through the smoke and chaos, Oscar heard a sound that shouldn't have existed in that moment. A cry. Not human, but unmistakably, a cry of terror. His training screamed at him to evacuate. The blast doors would seal in 90 seconds. The fire suppression system had failed. Every instinct told him to run. But Oscar had never been good at listening to instincts. He pulled his jacket over his head and plunged into the flames. The heat struck him like a physical wall, searing his exposed skin. Through watering eyes, he spotted a figure huddled behind a fallen cargo container, small and trembling. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality that marked her as distinctly non-human, an alien. A Vexari, if he remembered his xenobiology correctly. What was one doing on a human freighter? The girl looked up at him with eyes like liquid silver, wide with fear. She couldn't have been more than a teenager by any species standards. Her breathing apparatus had been damaged, and she clutched at her throat, struggling for oxygen in the smoke-filled air. Oscar didn't hesitate. He scooped her up. She was lighter than he expected, and ran. The flames pursued them like living things, and he felt his jacket catch fire as he dove through the blast doors just as they hissed shut behind them. He rolled, extinguishing the flames, then immediately checked on the girl. She was unconscious but breathing, her chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. Oscar carried her to the medical bay, where Dr. Sarah Martinez worked frantically to stabilize her condition. She's a Vexari dignitary's daughter, the captain explained later, his face pale. Stowaway, we think. Wanted to see human space. We didn't even know she was aboard. Oscar barely heard him. He stood outside the medical bay, his hands bandaged, thinking about those silver eyes. 3 days later, the girl woke. Her name was Daisy, at least. That's what the translation matrix rendered her unpronounceable Vex-REI name as. She sat up in the medical bed, her iridescent skin now returned to its healthy luminescence, and asked to see the human who touched fire. When Oscar entered the medical bay, Daisy stared at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. In Vex-REI culture, he would learn, fire was sacred and untouchable. To enter flames willingly was considered either insanity or divinity. Why? She asked simply, her voice melodic through the translator. Oscar shrugged, wincing at the pull of healing skin. You needed help, but you could have died. You risked your life for a stranger. For an alien. Number 4. Does that matter? The question seemed to stun her. She stared at him for a long moment, then bowed her head, a gesture of profound respect among her people. My people would not have done the same. Oscar shifted uncomfortably. I'm sure that's not. It is true, Daisy interrupted, her silver eyes meeting his. We are an empire of order and logic. We calculate risk and reward. We would have let me burn rather than risk a valuable crew member for an unauthorized passenger. She touched her throat where her damaged breathing apparatus had been. You saved me, without calculation, without hesitation. This is extraordinary. What Oscar didn't know, what none of the crew of the Meridian Dawn knew, was that Daisy was not just any dignitary's daughter. She was the daughter of the supreme hierarch, the emperor of the Vex-REI Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. When word reached the Vex-REI homeworld, the response was immediate and unprecedented. A fleet of warships appeared at the edge of human space, their weapons systems dormant, but their presence unmistakable. Humanity's colonial government braced for invasion. Instead, they received a message requesting diplomatic assembly. The supreme hierarch himself wished to meet this human called Oscar Chen. The meeting took place on a neutral station. Oscar, uncomfortable in formal attire, stood before an alien emperor who commanded the loyalty of 1,000 worlds. Daisy stood beside her father, but her eyes were on Oscar. The supreme hierarch was an imposing figure, his iridescent skin marked with the geometric patterns of age and authority. He studied Oscar for a long moment, and the human fought the urge to fidget under that alien gaze. "You pulled my daughter from fire," the hierarch said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes, sir. Knowing you would be burned. I couldn't leave her." "Why not?" Oscar looked at Daisy, then back at the Emperor. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because she was scared, and hurt, and alone. Because..." He struggled to find the words. "Because that's what humans do. We help." The supreme hierarch was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he knelt. Behind him, his retinue of advisors and guards followed suit. Through the viewport, Oscar could see the Vex-REI fleet performing the same gesture, their massive ships adjusting their orientation in a synchronized display of respect. "For 3,000 years, my empire has ruled through strength and logic," the hierarch said, his voice carrying a weight Oscar couldn't fully comprehend. "We have conquered worlds and bent species to our will. We believed this was civilization's apex power without sentiment, order without compassion." He rose, and his eyes the same liquid silver as his daughter's fixed on Oscar. "You have shown me that we were wrong. That true strength lies not in calculation, but in the willingness to sacrifice for others. That compassion is not weakness, but the highest form of courage." The Emperor extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Humanity will have the friendship and protection of the Vex-REI Empire, for as long as your species exists. This I swear on the sacred flames themselves." Oscar took the offered hand, still processing what was happening. Daisy smiled at him, a gesture her species had learned from humans. "You changed everything," she said softly. "One act of kindness, and you changed an empire." As Oscar stood there, surrounded by kneeling aliens and bearing witness to a moment that would echo through history, he realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their stubborn, illogical, beautiful refusal to let someone burn when they could save them, even if it meant walking through fire themselves. The end.